Good afternoon, everyone. BC Richfield here, coming to you live from London. It has literally just ticked midday here, which makes it 1100 UTC. A big shout out to everybody that's joining the stream live today, and obviously everybody that's watching this on recording as well. So I hope everyone had a fantastic weekend. For any fellow Brits out there, it was St George's Day. Not something that's wildly celebrated over here, strangely, but it is obviously our day of national celebration. We actually tend to have bigger celebrations for St Patrick's Day, celebrating the Irish. But also, as well, really importantly for any of our kind of Muslim brothers and sisters, it was Eid as well. So wishing you all a fantastic end to Ramadan. McRule, Queen, Nitpar, everybody else that's on the show that's live today. Great to see you all. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. Going to steam into BTC straight away. Going to try and keep this one a little bit shorter today, which you'll kind of see as this plays out. We'll obviously be back again for Alt Request Wednesday. But if there are any questions and bits and pieces as we go through the stream, guys, just pop it in the questions and then we'll take a look as well. See, Ron, how are you doing, buddy? Good to see you. So before I jabber on and go off topic, let's get straight on just with the weekly chart, right? So these are exactly the levels that I was showing yesterday in the Bird Nest Bitcoin report, right? So really clearly, I'm not focusing too much on going back historically. Why? I mean, there's obviously some levels around here, right? We can see here long downside wicks where we've got absorption in this area, and we're kind of coming back up into this now, but that isn't really what I'm focused on a weekly scale. The red line represents the liquidity that's resting above here. That's basically stop losses on this scale, people that were short in here coming down. If anybody's holding those positions, they're going to be praying to offload them as close to break even as possible. Hey, Gustavo, 9 p.m. in Sydney. Legend. Another Aussie joining the stream again, which is cool. Got some really good friends living out there, and we'll definitely have to get myself out there. They're in New Zealand. Going to take some time off, maybe in a few years' time, and just do some traveling and go and do a few months in both, I think. So the green line here, the reason that's significant for me is because look at what we can see here, right? Just zoom in a little bit for you. We had resistance, with 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks failing to close above that level. So naturally, when we had this pop above and we got this strong close, the assumption was that price was going to kind of move higher to here. Now, we'll look at this on the lower time frames, right? But this is kind of a really, really good example of why it doesn't make sense to FOMO into these moves when they pop, yeah? Now, there's no way of knowing at the time whether this is going to deviate, come back below this level and then sell off, or whether this is a really, really strong close. And sometimes they don't come back and they kind of just leave you for dust, right, while they go up higher. But there's ways that we can kind of look into that, and I wanted to kind of have a look at a few of those as well. YouTube user, yeah, Wax Shah as well, legends, good to see you both. So really, there's not too much on a weekly scale, right? Like I said, we've got this, yeah, which is our resting liquidity. If they're going to come up to push price higher, this was a key level for me. I really, really wanted to see this hold, ideally some kind of retest, but obviously you can see we've really kind of gone through that. And also as well, the other thing that we don't want to forget is the actual candles themselves, yeah? So we can see here, we got a couple of kind of, doji candles like these where you get the body in the middle, wicks either side, are a sign of indecision. The volume of the trading is in the bodies, right? So you can see and you can feel the indecision, which is quite natural after you have a big expansion, right? Stream Doctor, hey buddy. But look, we've got a bearish engulfing candle taking us below a key SR here. We've got a fair value gap here on the weekly. We know these like to get rebalanced. We've got our resting liquidity below this low here as well. Angry Patrick, my man, haven't seen you in a while. How are you doing, buddy? So this is where we are. Really, there's not really much more to say on a weekly scale. What you can see is that we're kind of in between here and here. We've come under this level. Would be nice to see price maybe pull back a little bit if it's going to kind of come down lower. We've not really kind of retested this. We did have this daily close below here and then a little pullback, but again, a really, really kind of strong sell-off. So what's the daily telling us, right? I mean, we can see here a little bit more as well why this level's so key. We're coming up into here. Look, all of this resistance, right? Look at all these wicks coming up. You can see this absorption. And then when we do really pop, yeah, price doesn't really give people the opportunity to get involved. For me personally, on the higher time frame, what I'd be looking to do here is looking for the inefficiency here in the move, right? Now, I'd be taking this really as the price leg. So taking that into account, if we're treating this, we're looking at this as our premium and discount range, yeah, we can see here that as price came up into this area, it's come back down. Ideally, we wanted to see it kind of retest this green line here as well, because it would have put us down into discount, meaning that we favor our long setups, all right? We didn't get that. We kind of nuked straight through it. And now, when we look at this price leg here as well, the next part of what I want to discuss is the idea that I'm not really sure we would want to be favoring short setups here either. You know, the time to short was either taking setups up here, trying to play it down to the retest. Even really once we left this, it didn't give people much opportunity to get involved, right? So this is what we're looking at. Queenie, great to see you on. Thank you so much. I even got some roses from Queen before the stream even started today, which really made me smile. So considering that, what do I think is most likely? Well, I think it is showing weakness coming below this level here. You know, it was a hell of a fight to get above it. Is this now ultimately our deviation? Price has come back within the range or below the level and is now looking to come down further. So for me, I'm looking for this here. If I was looking for continuation here, I would have looked for the pullback in this fair value gap, look at it on the lower time frames, yeah, which we'll take a look at shortly, look for bullish market structure, and then expect an attack on these highs followed by these. What we can see here, and why it's always really important to do a couple of things. One, the actual candlesticks themselves tell us a lot. Look at all these wicks, you know, like we were discussing here, right, to the upside, showing that there's absorption. It's showing that people are trying to get the price up there, but people are just offloading the positions, right? So there's not enough willing buyers there to push price higher. When you get moves like this, you notice, obviously we call them inefficient moves with fair value gaps, right? So when price pops like this and we leave these gaps, now it can either be a sign of one of two things: that buyers are stepping in, yeah, or sellers. But in the bullish case, look at these gaps here. Buyers stepping in, really, really moving the markets fast, not really giving people the opportunity to get involved, right? Maybe more so on the lower time frames. Or they're signs like this when the market's getting manipulated, right? Because if we take a look at this level here, right, or actually we've got stops resting below here, we've got the stops that were resting below there, right, which we came into. So now this big bullish candle down here leaving the fair value gap, right, when that came down, that to me signals that the market's getting pushed aggressively in that direction. And that can be manipulation as well by bigger players, right? It can be making the market come down to here to trigger the stops under these lows as well, create a lot of liquidity that can then be bought up, yeah, because obviously the people that were long here, their stop losses are sell orders. Big players need lots and lots of these sell orders to fill their buy orders, right? Which happens here, and then you see these ridiculous expensive moves higher that again give people very, very little chance to get involved, right? Now, one of the other things that we can do when we're looking at this is I do like to look at volume, right? So just zooming out a little bit here, and especially on the lower time frames, we see this really high kind of volume spike. The bearish one, bullish, doesn't really matter. It's something that stands up above the norm. If you were to put a mean on here, you'd be sat down about here. If you look at these areas where price spikes above it, even here, you're either getting these little corrective moves quite often, or you're actually pinning the point of a reversal, right? You can get the same when you start looking back to here. Yes, obviously we've had this big aggressive dump here. You get the volume start to build, and then you start to reverse. So we can see here, slightly similar, but not really enough of an anomaly like these. Didn't really stand out too much. I'm just going to pop that off for a minute just so that it stays nice and clean. Nick, hey buddy, it would still be good to catch up at some point. I think you might have missed my messages. We'll try again. No problem. Ah, okay, yeah, mate. Pop me something on Twitter. I'm really not sure. I did check for your messages, Nit, actually. Unless you're maybe under a different username, in which case just ping me on there and just put in the message, because some of them get automatically blocked. I'm not really sure, to be honest, what happens with the server, because some seem to come through and you get to accept them, and some seem to be blocked. But drop me a message there, either through the Discord you can go through on the free public chat, or you can just reach out to me on my Twitter, buddy. I'll be happy to help you out and get back to you. Retro Water, morning to you, buddy. So, weekly fair value gap. The other thing that I wanted to cover on the daily scale here, though, let me just clean this up a bit, is looking at these inefficiencies, right? Looking at these fair value gaps that we've got. We've got this one here, this one here. This whole move up was very thin. And again, if we want to look at this as a whole move, yeah. So actually, this time we're looking at it, not the displacement leg, as we would call it, as in the leg that's moved from here to take out these highs. This is the actual leg before we're then breaking down, right? Now we're shifting structure here because we're coming down below these lows, right? Technically, we would want to see a lower high set and then a break of these lows. So something like this, right? Price to come up to here, inverse this fair value gap, yeah? Because that was a bullish fair value gap. We were looking to that to support price. When price has gone through it, and you often see this when price moves through it with great ease, yeah, you can then look when price returns to that area, right, to see if that now becomes resistance. So if we were to look for something like this, we would come back, set the lower high, right, and then we can ultimately, I don't know what is going on with this today, 1 second. So into this area here, set the lower high, so we've got our low, our lower low, lower high, and then a break of this down into this area here where we've got our fair value gap on a weekly scale, and then we're also down ultimately back in discount, right? Favoring long setups. That's when we can start hunting for these setups via our fair value gaps, right? Like this one here on the daily. If we get price come down into this, what we would do is we would then be jumping onto the lower time frames. We would be looking for a sweep of liquidity, a break of structure, a return, and then for price to move higher. Ultimately, if we start breaking down in here, then we know where our resting liquidity is below the lows. All right. Nit, yeah, DM's blocked on both. Okay, mate. Just pop me a comment on one of my Twitter posts, mate, and then I can add you, and then you can put that through without any issues. So retro water, BTC looking bearish. Next stop maybe 26.8. Yeah, really interesting. So let's take a look. 26.8 around about here. So kind of into this area. Let's just clear this up. So 26.8, I can see an area probably around here. No, that's maybe a bit higher. 26.5, 26.8. So almost really kind of sat around this area here where we've got this kind of SR. Yeah, if we're taking this, let me just do that as green to show that it's support. We're taking it basically from the extreme of this wick because there's something obviously quite keen stop the market there. We then had a big move through it and see how these wicks have come into this area for support. The other thing I like about that kind of level here is that we've got the resting liquidity below it here, which is about 26.474, so call it 26.5. In terms of seeing a bullish reaction at this point, and what would be actually really quite bullish here is if you're coming into this, right, and then see this weekly fair value gap. If we had a really strong reaction here, we've got this kind of pseudo support level here, liquidity resting below here. If we were to see something, definitely not something like that because I want to click the right thing. So if we were to see something like this and then really get a fast recovery above this level, yeah, then I think the path we'd be looking for would be something like that, right? Because you'd want to see price come into here and recover this quite fast, draw back into this move up, this displacement leg, and then use this, reclaim this as support, showing that the blast below was purely to generate liquidity, to grab liquidity, before a move higher. And then we're really clean. We can then just trade these almost like a range, right? You've got from here to here, and then ultimately here to this high, right? And then we can look for our setups within there. So yeah, I can completely see where you're getting that from, Retro Water. Yeah, DM's blocked on both. Yeah, sorry, mate. But yeah, just pop me one today or tomorrow when you can, Knit, and just mention that it's Knit in the comments, and then I'll ping you a DM, mate. So daily scale, we're kind of here as well. Now, as we move on to the 4 hour, and we're going to look at some of the lower time frames as well for some setups to just show you why I'm not really that, well, I say I'm not that keen. I'm not looking to enter any positions at the moment because we're just kind of a little bit in no man's land for me. So I drew this out, which is our 4 hour fair value gap, right? Now, the idea of this is that if price is going to come back to retrace into this, feel this inefficiency, and then look to purge it a little bit lower, it's within here that we can look for our setups. Okay. Now, we've had a reaction at this low. Right. We can see here, price came in, ran this, and now it's come back up into this fair value gap. Now, what you'd want to see here on the lower time frames, if we go down to say like a 15-minute chart, then when you get these moves back into these areas, yeah, what you're looking for really are liquidity sweeps, or certainly what I'm looking for. So favoring short setups here, right? I don't trade much over the weekends. I like to trade when traditional markets are open as well. But basically, for those that watch the stream, will know that basically I use the same kind of entry methodology across different time frames. And I want to see a sweep, yeah, to show that liquidity's been taken. And then I want to see displacement, yeah, an energetic move lower, leaving a fair value gap. And then within there, what we can do, you can then narrow that down into even lower time frames, right? And then you can look for setups within here. You hold this area, you look to break down, and then you're ultimately looking for breakdowns towards liquidity targets lower, okay? And often when you see these long downside wicks, like these ones here, something quite specific, even like with this one, right? Like we did on the 4 hour, if we go back to this one where we get this level from, we can see that really, really strong reaction, right? And that for me is always signals that that's an area of interest. So when we set this wick here, or even when we look at this cluster of wicks here, when we come in, price kind of aggressively comes away, comes back again, aggressively comes away. Run this low, big impulse move higher, but again, kind of being tackled by this level. However, what you see when you look closer is that price comes up here, big sell-off, comes up again towards this area, comes back down for liquidity, ultimately has this big expensive move higher, which takes out these highs. But then notice how price comes down and finds support within this fair value gap, yeah? So again, if we're looking at our displacement leg here, we can see how it's finding support down here in discount, yeah, which is exactly what we want to see. Then when this level gets held, again, look at the difference in the wicks here, these long downside wicks, price just getting bought up, yeah? Really struggling to set lower lows here, especially with any closes. We then get this nice little pop here, yeah? You see this? Leaves this here, this fair value gap, price looks ready to move higher, and then ultimately it expands. So until we kind of get a clear indication of where price is running and what it's after, the trades are a little bit high risk. So I want to take a quick look at ETH with you guys today as well. And obviously, if anyone's got any particular questions about this, or maybe there's a couple of other assets they're looking at, we'll take a quick look at those before we end the stream today. So just pour out my tea. Something else I wanted to share with you all today as well. Not sure if any of you tea enthusiasts are on here. I know a few of you are, but top news coming out of Britain this weekend is that Yorkshire Tea have won the vote for best British tea again. That's how exciting things are in the UK at the moment. That really is probably the most positive news story that's come out of the last few weeks. So let's take a look at ETH. Now, key levels on ETH haven't changed. I still like the look of these two ranges here. This for me was significant because that capped the market. When price came down here, we closed below ultimately and then sold off. B&B, please. Yeah, of course, mate. No problem. Let's take a quick look at ETH and then we'll finish up on some B&B, shall we? So for me, these are really key areas that are capping the market, right? They become slightly clearer when we look at them on a daily scale. We can see the nature of the support and resistance levels. And one of the things that I like doing when I'm really thinking about this, when you're looking at it, right, strong reaction here now. We had a strong move below this, retest, retest. Ultimately, price has then got comfortable here, and it's then looked to sell off. Let's have a look here. Whack. What one do you mean, sorry, mate? On ETH or on Bitcoin, mate? Is that an order block at the EQ point of the weekly fair value gap? On this one, mate, or do you mean, so there was this one here that was filled. Is it on this one you were talking about, Whack, or was that back on Bitcoin, mate? So this one, first of all, on a weekly scale, we can see we didn't actually touch that level. I thought that we were going to. Here, we were very, very shy of it, but ultimately had that rejection there. When we go on to the daily, we can see the interactions with the level a lot clearer, right? So look at the amount of time it spent trying to get above this level here. Then when we get above it here, we had this lovely hold here, and then we had a nice structured move up to our midline. Hang on, just zoom in for that a bit for you. Nice structured move up to our midline here. Found a little bit of resistance, but ultimately just pulled back down into this fair value gap. Yeah. And then everything kind of pumped up to here. Ultimately, when we lose a fair value gap in the opposite direction, especially on a higher time frame, it can be a really, really key sign to keep an eye on, especially when you get fair value gap like this run through aggressively by another fair value gap, obviously a bearish one, taking over that bullish one, and then we see continuation, right? Then what I'm looking for is this, the stops resting below these lows, right? Where's price most likely to go to find a match, right? Because I think people forget really simple things. Like with any market, it's all about matching buyers and sellers, right? So, if you're a big player and you've got a lot of assets to sell, well, you want to find a large amount of buyers that are willing to pay the price that you want to sell for. Otherwise, you risk losing a lot of your position through slippage. Okay, so that's why we pay a lot of attention to these higher time frame levels here, because here are often where the big institutional players are positioning. All right. So as we stand at the moment, we've still got. Let's have a look at this low. So we see this here. We've got this low from back here. We've got the low set by this candle here, right? When we came back up, we left this nice. I'll do this in red just so it stands out because it's bearish. Price came down. Now it's tagged back into this. Yeah. Took out the prior day's high. It's now taken out the prior day's low. So for me, this really does mean that we could be getting a little bit choppy in here, right? Here we can go. So we can see how price just came in and just literally tickled this level. And then we had a pretty strong reaction, right, back to the downside. So I'll show you this when we move on to that. But this was yesterday's high, yesterday's low. Yesterday's high got run in Asia, right? Yesterday's low has also been run here as well, coming into start London. So for me, I really want to see how the range kind of plays out today. In terms of liquidity, we can see the kind of drawdown here. If we move slightly lower, I'm looking to day trade this, then really this fair value gap's quite key for me, because I think if price manages to reclaim this and retest it, then I don't see why we might not make a move on this high, right? Price is obviously taken liquidity from the lows here. If it's showing strength coming back up here, gets above this fair value gap, the only inefficiency in this drop on our hourly scales, then I think that's a sign of strength. And I'd look to the lower time frames, maybe the 5 minute and down, to look for any potential scalp longs. However, if price gets held below here, and especially looking at the EQ of this fair value gap, which would be around here, if we start to see more rejections here and price really kind of comes back down, then we've got some really clear targets resting here, right? Our high time frame levels. I think that's going to be the draw, because ultimately, if price can't show strength here, then I think it moves a little bit lower. A couple of questions coming in. Let's have a look, and then we're going to flick across onto BNB. Any thoughts on all the meme coin madness recently? Worth a play. I feel like it's mega gambling. Yeah, Nick, I agree. I think I always revert to people I consider definitely better experts than me in these kind of things. So our fundamental team, like Julian, Milky as well, who have a really, really good kind of handle on that, looking at them more for the fundamental side. But meme coins, as we've seen with Doge over the years, we've seen with Shiba and stuff like that, and obviously now with Pepe and stuff, but they can just go ballistic. Obviously, the risk with them is, like you say, that it really is just kind of gambling, and the rug can get pulled on those at any moment, as Elon Musk shows with Doge or the coin. He just needs to do one little thing to affect it, and the thing will absolutely fly. So what I would say with those type of things is just don't ignore the price action and the technical analysis, right? Get on the higher time frame charts, look at where the good buying zones are. Yeah, you'll see, especially on Doge, there's a really, really key level where everyone really seems to be gobbling it up. Just don't get caught. If you miss the pump on these, then it's just not about kind of aping in or FOMOing in, because the chances are you're part of that liquidity run, basically exit liquidity, people looking to get out of their positions. But like I say, do check out Julian. And check out Milky as well. Those guys have really, really got a good handle on this stuff. But yeah, I tend to stay away from the meme coins really, unless I can get in at the key buy zones on Doge. Retro Water, ETH next support level looks like 1760 to 1770 on the higher time frames. Then let's take a very quick look at that, shall we? So what we got here, buddy? Whack. Yeah, no problem, mate. I'll have a pop back for you and take a quick look. 1760, 1770. So around about here. Yeah, I think you can see here, right, resistance. I mean, this is a little bit kind of messy up here. So much of a deviation, but I think if you take these highs here pretty much and draw them across, what we can see here is that the market was being capped here, was also being capped here. This strong move above this level, followed by these nice retests here. We also have an order block here, right, which is what this black line is. If I really zoom out, you see the end of this, which is our daily order block. So that could be an interesting level. I've got that capped around 1772, bud. So I can see where you're coming in there with 1760, 1770. I do think that we've got this level here, though, we should be aware of. Not saying it's definitely going to act as support, but I would think that if we run this, there's a couple of things worth watching. We've got that key level there. We've got these all kind of relative equal lows here. Price really could see a bit of a reaction here, but what it should do is really give us a clear indication, because we'd want to see a pretty strong V-shaped recovery here, right? Get back in market structure, look for entries here. However, we have this purge down and we're really kind of struggling. We get back below here, yeah, then here or here, these more aggressive entries. The fact that we've purged below, come back above, and then come back under again, for me, would be a sign of weakness. And in which case, then we've got some really clearly defined levels below that we can look to target. So just before we take a look at BNB, let me just cover this for whack quickly. Let's have a look, see if this fancy's loading up. I think TradingView is feeling a little bit page unresponsive. What is going on today, eh? I think TradingView might have had a bit of a heavy, weekend. It's been a bit slow this morning. YouTube user, how have you been getting on with B-Prone Trade? I found it really useful, especially time spent scanning markets, possible setups. Obviously, still learning how best to use it. Oh, mate, I love the B-Pro Trader. I'll let you guys in on a little system that I use for it. Actually, why not? It's just a wonderful piece of kit. So for those of you that don't know, it's our in-house indicator called the Burbicator Pro. It's been built by Burb over the years, and it's basically a standalone indicator. You can use it for a number of different features, but a lot of the stuff that I do is around either the divergences, which it gets 10 or 11 different indicators and collates all the divergences on them, and then gives you a percentage based on strength of how strong that diversion is. And honestly, that thing is unbelievable at catching reversals and also corrections in ongoing trends. So yeah, if I forget, mate, if I get distracted on that, remind me, because I'll run through that for you guys as well. I really like using the hourly trailer. The daily trailer is unbelievable, and then the hourly as well. If you're looking to kind of do day trading on a 5 minute, it can just be superb. So whack, my friend, Let's go back to your original question, mate. Hang on. Is that an order block at the EQ point of the weekly fair value gap? So, hey, how you doing, bud? How's Thailand treating you? A dear friend of mine and fellow Burb Nest team member, Pedma7, Pedro, has just spent a couple of weeks in that beautiful part of the world and absolutely loved it. So it's good to see you on the stream, bud. Yeah, so is this the fair value gap that you mean here, Whack? It's raining. It's raining in England as well, mate. I know you guys do get some serious rain. And my God, doesn't it get humid as well? So this fair value gap here, yeah, there would be. So you've got this is would be considered a bullish order block for me, or these consecutive candles, because you've got a fair value gap after it, right, which gives extra validation. In terms of these ones here, if we're looking at this fair value, if we're looking at these fair value gaps here, these inefficiencies, then as we draw them across, I'm not sure. I mean, there's this for sure, right? So you've got this. If we draw this in quickly, this was definitely of interest to me. And I take that from the wick down from that point because it's got a fair value gap after it, right? If not, then I typically just make an allowance for the bodies. So we can see we kind of came into this area here. We didn't hold it that clean. We had that kind of deviation through it, but now ultimately we're back underneath it as well. But at the EQ of this, maybe the top of this, if you're adjoining all of those candles as an order block. So again, could be some nice confluence if you come into that and hold that order block and then move higher. Sorry, on a daily, mate. Okay, I see what you mean, my friend. Yeah, certainly. So this one, yeah? Exactly. I definitely have a look on that. We can see we got a nice expanse here. So this is where people were repositioning, ultimately fueling for that move higher. Ultimately, as well, if people were trying to short this, which they might have done, bearing in mind we ran these highs and had this long upside wick, there could be some people holding some real positions in here, looking for price to return to that as well. So no, I think that's a really, really good spot. So before I digress too much, Craig, how are you doing, buddy? Just enjoying my Yorkshire tea, Craig. Won Best Tea in Britain award again. Well, I mean, loosely, my good friend of mine sent me across an article about it today, although it was from the Sun newspaper. So, you know, take that, take that as you will. B&B, right? Let's run a quick top down on B&B, shall we? Give everybody a chance to ask a few questions and bits and bobs. Let's let this load, and then let's just get all of this. See again, guys, here, look, when we're interacting with these key, look, nice clear high here led to a big sell-off. When we return there, we get that nice corrective move. We don't have to catch the reversal, right? We can just get some lovely day trades involved in that here. And again, sweep the lows out from here, ultimately into this order block and move higher, which is, as Whack pointed out on the daily, yeah, see that little order block in this fast move up, which is very much like we had on the daily for Bitcoin. So we can see when price returned to this area, it failed to close below it, ultimately established some support and then moved up higher to attack these highs. So let me just... Right, so any questions, guys, as we go through this, please do feel free to ask away. I thought with it looking at the moment, to be honest with you, I'm looking to wait to see how the range plays out today. I'm also very keen to see what happens when we move into the New York sessions, which start the time that I'm most interested in that is looking at them on is from sort of 1:30 p.m. our time onwards, but around about 2:30, that 9:30, looking for what ICT used to teach as, or still does, I suppose, as the Judas swing, right? Which is that you can quite often see these purges happening around that time, the beginning of the New York market, and then it kind of reverts and moves lower. What are you seeing to prove it's an order block? Really good question. Super Shogun, hey buddy, good to see you. YouTube user. So what are you seeing to prove it's an order block? Now, there's different theories on order blocks, supply and demand blocks. ICT obviously teaches them as order blocks as well, and people have different interpretations of them. for me, and let's just pop this onto a daily so that we've got just a couple more examples, right? What I like to see from an order block is you'll see some people that say, it's the last up candle before a move lower. There's a couple of things that I've kind of taken over the years, and I like to see a run on liquidity coming into it. Yeah, something like that. Then I like to see this kind of impulse move lower. Yeah, and something that gives that validity here is when it's followed by a fair value gap. Why? Because it just makes sense to me that if the orders were in here, when you get that big fast move away, you've got people trapped in here. It didn't give people a chance to get out of their positions, right? Ultimately, you don't really want to see these violated too much. If they are and it comes back underneath, I would then look to day trade that down to liquidity, which we can see was resting here. We tag that. Now, however, that we've run that again, it doesn't make sense to me to hold that one, right? This one here, for example, yeah, we've got the up close candle, big move away. If we were to then come and revisit this, yeah, then that's what I'd be looking for. So a good way to do it sometimes is to look for these sweeps on liquidity, yeah, and then these impulse moves away that leave these fair value gaps. And then often when price returns to those levels, you've got something that gives you a little bit more validity. I would really recommend watching ICT stuff on order blocks. I think it's really, really fascinating. I think he clarifies it really well too. But you've also got other people. There's different ways that they make allowances for them in terms of supply and demand. That was an awesome question, YouTube user. So, BNB. Here we go. Let's do a quick top down on BNB, and then we've got Gustavo. Is that Ada or Eva? Let me know if it's those, mate, or if you're obviously being British. I'm absolutely useless at languages, including my own. So apologies if that was Spanish or something asking a really simple question. I'm thinking it's an altcoin. So one thing that we can see here is quite interesting on BNB, especially on a weekly scale, is how price has kind of been tucked in this range here, right? So if we're looking mostly at the kind of bodies, if you like, here, allowing up for that, it's been very, very clean. This could be a deviation. Maybe we're about to kind of step in lower, but let's look a little bit more recent. So what happened here? We ran this high, yeah? And then price broke down quicker. Oh, sorry, my Hydge Milo. What did I miss up there? Let's have a look. Okay. So going to 29k here, everyone will short to 26, 27 zones. So can we make a fake short move to around 29k and then go to 32? Yeah, absolutely. So like we looked at before, we can see that there's a lot of liquidity resting below there, right? Sentiment's going to be a little bit bearish here. We closed the first bullish week. We've had quite a lot of up days and we've had quite a lot of strength in the market recently as well. So people, obviously optimistically want to remain bullish. So they might, the fact that we've had that kind of purge now, typically people do get into these moves quite late. So I do think that it's highly possible that we can run those stops lower down, like we showed on the chart actually. Then if we do recover that, we have that V-shaped recovery back above the level, then I think that there's absolutely every chance that price does move higher. I don't like to try and look at make these kind of predictions too long term. For me, I find it's kind of helped my trading career a lot more, especially for the type of trader that I am, is kind of looking at where the local liquidity is resting, starting on the kind of higher time frames, and then looking at how price reacts when we get there, right? So in terms of when we're running these key liquidity levels, that's where we can kind of get onto our lower time frames and ultimately look for where the next ones are. So on a weekly scale, this is interesting me at the moment, the lows here. Why we've kind of come up, taken liquidity above these highs, ultimately starting to break down. If we now look at this on a daily scale, we can start plugging into this a little bit more. Yeah. So we came up here, took liquidity. What did we do? Leave this fair value gap. Price came up into this fair value gap and ultimately went for liquidity lower down. That was our target via this low that was left in the pullback. Now, when price then ran the liquidity down here, we had the expansion higher again. This one, just as you can see here, just clipped into the fair value gap here before going higher. So the same kind of principles apply here, right? Price corrected lower. Now, where we saw strength here is when price corrected, it took this high, the liquidity resting above here. Price came down into here, right? Now, for the bullish case, this should have held, right? You wanted to see this hold and then price move up. However, what happened here is within this fair value gap, that was left, price retraced into this and then we got the sell-off, right? Now, this is what we're talking about in terms of how we can see people jump into these moves too late. The real key thing for me here, right, is you've got stops resting under these lows, So when price comes down into here, really, you want to be taking the shorts in the key areas, right? You're watching for the inefficiencies, or certainly how I look at it, price to pull back. And then this really presents you a good opportunity to short in here. However, a lot of people would have been jumping onto this after it went, jumping on, getting into the bearish sentiment too late, and ultimately get punished here, right? When these stops are run and the market reverses. So by the same theory, we've also got a lot of stops now resting under here, right? We've got these relative equal lows here as well on the way down. And ultimately, we've got this. So looking at this on a daily scale, if we apply the same theories here, we've got our fair value gap here on the daily. As long as price is holding below this, and there's an especial interest here from me in terms of the EQ, right? Which we can see here how well respected that is by the bodies of the candles. Now we're looking to break down. If we start to get some breakdown on the lower time frames, then we've got some nice clear targets below, right? But as we can see here at the moment, we're not ultimately getting that breakdown, right? Price came up, bullish fair value gap, reclosed that with a bearish one, reclaimed this again. So this area here, although this isn't really a traditional way that you would use fair value gaps, we can see here that this is kind of flipped from bullish fair value gap, violated bearish fair value gap, right? And now this is kind of now being closed back above. So could we see this being used as support here, right? And also the other point of interest is flipping this here, the up candle before that sell-off, talking about order blocks, So this here would have expected to be resistance, right, when we came to retest it, but we didn't. And ultimately, look what we've done. We've come above that and we're finding support in here, So this could be a sign of strength. The one thing that I'd be a little bit nervous about here are these equal highs. Okay, so a super safe kind of play here would be to see these overcome and then to see this turn to support, right? In which case we look for our liquidity targets higher up. We've got these highs here, and obviously we've got our level. However, if we came up, clear that up quickly. If we came up here and we take out these highs coming into this inefficiency here, right? Now, if we then start to break down, we lose market structure. If we're looking at this leg down here, we can see we get our favoritism here. We're in premium, meaning that we should be favoring shorts. So if we do come up and we get that reaction back down, this kind of area here could present some really nice shorting opportunities. So that's what I'd be kind of thinking about right now on BNB, guys. So Gustavo, if you are still here, my friend, was that EVA or ADA that you wanted to take a quick look at? If not, we'll probably look to call this one a day right now at 44 minutes. So I'm looking to keep it a bit shorter. I know 15 minutes isn't exactly crazy short, but I think 45 minutes makes it a little bit more digestible for people, especially when they're watching it back. Now, Wednesday, we're going to be looking at our alt requests, right? So whether it's FX, whether it's traditional market assets, crypto, whatever you've got, do have a think about it. You can reach out to me on Twitter as well. I like to do it live on the show because I don't really like to prepare anything. I like to strip all the charts off and we can go through it top down. And then that way it helps people kind of get into the way that I'm kind of looking at the charts, my mindset on it. But it's also a really, really good way to build consistency when you're doing it yourself. Okay. Sorry, mate. I thought it might be. I thought it might be some obscure couple of alts that I hadn't heard of. People always kind of bringing those to my attention very kindly. Brilliant. Thanks for clarifying, buddy. Awesome. So Nick, Gustavo, everybody that's come onto there. Okay, so we've got some bold predictions happening today. Thank you. Remember me, it will happen. We'll see 35K after 32. Awesome. Well, I do love a bold prediction. Not how I kind of run it myself, but I do always respect people that put their positions on the line for that. So let's definitely remember that, my friend, and then we're going to have a look, yeah? And we'll see if we get that 35K after we take a little cheeky run. Now, Craig, Travelling Wednesday, catch up on playback. See you all next week. Have a fantastic week, everyone. Big thank you to everybody that's joining the stream today. We had loads of people on live. I hope you found it useful. Like I say, feeling a bit flat on the market at the moment. We've run Asia high. We've kind of taken out the low, prior day's high, prior day's low, cleared a bit of liquidity. Let's see how the range develops out, and let's look in a couple of hours towards a New York AM session and see if we get any of those covers. One thing I did want to cover, sorry, that I completely forgot, is the B Pro trailer. A few people asked about that, didn't they? So one thing I love about this is, especially if you sort of go onto the higher time frames here, like with the daily, especially if you start ignoring all of my, get rid of all my squiggles. Right, so this is the B Pro trailer here. You can see black when we're bearish, yeah? So once this goes bullish, we're favouring our long setups. You can see how it acts nicely as support here. When we flip bearish, we're then looking for shorts. Again, it all works particularly well with confluence, yeah? So, for example, here, when you run this and we turn bearish, no problem, but we don't want to FOMO in, right? What do we want to do? Wait for a retrace, take out this liquidity, come back towards the trailer, and then we hunt liquidity lower down. Ultimately, the same here. Even with this big expanse higher, once we were patient, we held the trailer here, we can start looking for setups within here. Now, what we're looking for on the hourly, which I find really interesting if you're someone that uses the B Pro trailer, is I like looking at it by having the high time frame trailer set to the hourly, yeah? And then the low time frame, I turn that off. And what I'm doing is I'm looking around the times that I want to execute for liquidity runs. So like we got this one here, B Pro trailers holding, price runs clear liquidity. So just let you in on this a little bit. Comes down, interacts with our trailer and holds, right? So we're looking for bullish liquidity sweeps. We come in here and we sweep liquidity down here, yeah? Ultimately, then what we want to see is price then shift market structure, which it does here. And then in this leg higher, yeah, we can either look at this as the displacement leg or we're looking at this before it takes structure. We can follow this up and we wait for price to return, yeah, because we're looking at this. We move this up here when we set this new high, and now we need fair value gaps, yeah, that are down here in discount that we can look for our long setups. And all of a sudden we can trigger in here and look to chase out these highs here. So if you are someone that's using B Pro, have a play around with those settings, right? Because you can go onto here and you can choose what timing you want the high time frame trailer to be left on. So it means that you can turn the current time frame off using this one, and then all of a sudden what you've got is these. You've got your high time frame trailer representing the hourly, so it helps keep you in the trend. And then while you're under this, you're looking for liquidity sweeps of the low, market structures higher, beautiful long setup there. Same here, long setup here, always just chasing down the liquidity resting against highs and lows. All right, guys, apologies for not catching that sooner. I know someone mentioned that. What I'll do is I'll start making this a bit more of a regular part of the stream and looking at the high time frames on there as well. War relaxation music. Awesome. I love a bit of relaxation music, actually, especially when I'm charting. But huge thanks to everybody. We are going to be back on Wednesday. If you've got any questions at all in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out. Remember, you can come and trade with me and the team over at Bybit. You can get access to our calls for free, I think just with a $100 deposit. Plus, you get lots of incentives as well from our partner Bybit. And you can also get a free trial for the Nest. So check out the description, come along. I think you can come in for a week for free, see if it's for you, see if you enjoy being part of the community and you want to learn. And also you can reach out to me on Twitter as well, guys. All right. Wish you all a fantastic week ahead. Really looking forward to seeing you all on Wednesday. Let's get our alt requests ready and see if we can find some opportunities. I'll catch you guys around the nest. Take care.